Do you remember back in kindergarten when the number one rule in class was don't color outside the lines? Well, this is what your teacher was preparing you for, graphing inequalities. So here's our first example. We need to graph this system of inequalities, which basically just means we need to figure out where these two inequalities intersect. If you've done systems of equations before by graphing or some other method, you probably know that for solving two equations, you need to graph the two equations and figure out where they cross. In this case, for inequalities, we're going to be doing the same thing. But it seems kind of weird because with inequalities, you're like shading in like half of the graph with each one. So our answer isn't actually going to be a number, it's going to be an area of the graph. So first we need to graph these two inequalities. If you're not quite sure how to graph inequalities, then I have a video on it that you can watch on the card on the screen right now, but I'll also quickly review it here. So essentially we need to graph these just like a line and then color in the right part of the graph. So for this first one, we have y is greater than 2x minus 2. Well, let's graph it just as if this is an equal sign. We need to graph the slope and the y-intercept. Remember that the form of a graph is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Don't question the letters, all right? So first of all, let's graph the y-intercept. In this case, the y-intercept is not 2, but it's negative 2. You always have to include the minus sign. So the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So we're going to start in the middle, and then along the y-axis, which is this big vertical line, we're going to go down 1, 2. This is going to be where it crosses. And now we just need to graph our slope. Our slope is right here, which is 2. And remember that slope is rise over run. So in this case, the rise is going to be 2 because our slope is 2. But because this isn't a fraction, we can just assume that it's over 1 because any number by itself is over 1. So our run is going to be 1. Rise 2, run 1. So let's go ahead and do that on our graph. We're going to rise 2 and run 1. So now we just need to draw a line between them. But because this is an inequality, not a regular line, we first need to ask ourselves, is this going to be a regular line, or are we going to have to draw a dashed line? Well, that's entirely based on if the line itself is going to be part of our answer. With something like this, the second equation, this sign has a line under it. And this little line under it means or equal to, meaning the line is part of the answer. But for this equation, we do not have a line underneath, which means that this line itself is not going to be part of the answer. So the way we show that it's not part of the answer is with a dashed line. So we're going to draw a dashed line in between these 2 points. So here is my horribly drawn dashed line. So now we just need to figure out which part we need to shade. Well, it says y is greater than this line. And if y is greater than, that means everything that's above this line. If it was less than, then we'd shade everything below. Now here's the thing, because we have another equation here coming up, not everything we shade might end up in the answer. Remember, it's where they both cross. So if you were actually doing this on paper, maybe you'd want to shade this in lightly or just draw some lines or something because it might not be part of the answer, but I'll just be doing it in blue. So I have now shaded in everything that is above the line, and this is going to be the answer for our first inequality. But remember, we're trying to find the answer to the system of inequalities, and that's only going to include what is an answer of both inequalities. So we need to do the second one now to figure out where that is. So let's go ahead and graph the second one now. In this case, our y-intercept is going to be 3. So we're going to start in the middle and go up 1, 2, 3. This is going to be where it crosses the y-axis. And now we just need to figure out our slope. Well, our slope is negative 2 over 3. Remember, the negative sign is included. So our rise is going to be negative 2, and our run is going to be 3. So a negative rise means we're going to be falling. So let's go to our point here. Our rise is negative 2, so we're going to fall 1, 2. And then we're going to run 1, 2, 3. And this will be our second point. So now we have to determine what kind of line we're drawing. Well, before we had the dashed line because we did not have the line under our sign. But in this case, we do have the line under our sign, which means the line is going to be part of the answer. So we can just draw a normal line in between these 2 points. So here is possibly the worst line you've ever seen, and this is going to be our line. But remember, this is an inequality, so we need to figure out which side of the line we need to shade. Well, in this case, it's less than, so everything below the line we're going to shade. So let's go ahead and do that in green. So there we go. We've graphed our 2 inequalities. So what is the answer to our inequality here? Well, it's going to be everywhere that is included in both answers. In this case, you see that this part of the green is a little bit darker than this part of the green because it also has blue in it. So this area here was shaded in both times. So that's going to be our answer. So there we go. This purplish blue area here is the answer to this inequality. Now here's another example. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video, try to graph this one for yourself, and then unpause and see if you did it right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do this the same way as we did before. We're going to graph these, and remember that the equation of the line is y equals mx plus b. So you may notice that we have one slight problem. This equation right here, this is not in the form y equals mx plus b because we have this minus 2 next to the y. So before we get started on graphing, we should probably get rid of this minus 2. So remember that this is multiplication here. How can we get rid of this minus 2? We can do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So we will divide both sides by minus 2. So in this case, these two cancel out. And on this side, we're just left with y. On the other side, we need to divide both of these, both the 6x and the 2, by minus 2. So 6x divided by minus 2, well, 6 divided by 2 is 3. And there's a negative sign here, so that has to carry over. And the x stays. Here we have 2 divided by 2, which is 1. And we have 1 minus sign, so the minus sign carries over. But remember, the one thing that makes solving inequalities different from just solving an equation is that whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. So in this case, the sign was less than. Now it's going to be greater than or equal to. So we have our new equation here of y is greater than or equal to negative 3x minus 1. And I'll go ahead and write that up here. So we now have two good equations here that are both in y equals mx plus b. So we can go ahead and start graphing them. So let's graph this one first. Y is less than 1/4 x plus 3. The plus 3 is the b part of y equals mx plus b. So that's going to be our y-intercept. So we're going to start in the middle and go up 1, 2, 3. This is going to be where it crosses the y-axis. And now we need to graph the slope. Remember that slope is rise over run. So our slope is 1/4. Rise is 1, run is 4. So let's go ahead and do that on our graph. The rise is 1, so we're going to rise 1, and we're going to run 1, 2, 3, 4. So now what kind of line do we draw? Is it going to be dashed or solid? Well, we don't have a line underneath here, right? That means that the line is not going to be included in our answer. So we need to draw a dashed line. So here's our dashed line. I'm sure you could draw a much better one than me, but here it is. Now we need to figure out which part of the graph are we going to shade in. Is it going to be the top or the bottom? Y is less than this equation. So less than is below the line. If it was greater than, it would be above the line. So let's go ahead and shade in everything that's below this line. So there we go. This is everything below the line shaded in. But we now need to graph our second inequality. So how do we graph this one? Well, we're going to find the y-intercept first, which is -1, not 1, -1. So we're going to start in the middle, and we're going to go down 1. Now we need to graph the slope. The slope is -3, and anything that isn't over a number is just over 1. So this is going to be over 1. So our rise is -3, as in we're falling 3, and the run is going to be 1. So we're going to rise or fall 1, 2, 3, and we're going to run 1. So now are we going to draw a dashed line or a solid line? Well, this is a line underneath here. That means or equal to. So the line is going to be part of our answer. So we need to draw a solid line. So now we need to decide, are we going to shade in the bottom or the top? Well, we have a greater than sign here. Y is greater than this equation, and greater than means we're going to shade everything above the line. So in green, I'm going to go ahead and shade in everything that is above this line. So there we go. That is the graph of y is greater than or equal to -3x minus 1. But we still haven't figured out the answer to our system of inequalities. Well, it's just going to be where these two graphs overlap, in this case, in this darkish green area. So I'm going to go ahead and shade that in purple to show where the answer is. So there we go. This is going to be our answer to this system of inequalities. So maybe solving a system of inequalities isn't quite as easy as just coloring in between the lines, but it's pretty similar. But this isn't the only thing you can do with a system of inequalities. Next, you can make entire shapes with systems of inequalities. If you want to learn how to do that, then you can watch this video right here. And as always, if you have any other questions and you're confused about anything, then go ahead and leave it in the comments and I'll be sure to answer it. Thanks for watching.